Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. And I'm proud to be joined by Chairman Reed, Chairman Menendez, Senators Kaine and Kelly. Now, first, yesterday was a really good day for our country with the passage of the signing of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. In the weeks and months and years to come, the American people are going to benefit. They're going to start benefiting immediately in many ways, but they're going to keep benefiting in months and years to come. And it'll make their daily lives better. It's going to create millions of good-paying jobs and make us a much stronger, more resilient economy, because when you build infrastructure, that always happens. We finally delivered on something that previous administrations, both Republican and Democrat, have tried to do but have been unable to complete, and we did it. And make no mistake, we'll keep going in the weeks ahead by passing the rest of the President's Build Back Better agenda. As I mentioned in my dear colleague over the weekend, the Senate has a whole lot of important things to do between now and the end of the year. And given the House deferred vote on Build Back Better, last night we began the process to turn to the NDAA this week. We heard Republicans say repeatedly that this legislation is urgent and needs to be taken up immediately. With their cooperation, the Senate can start considering the bill as early as today. We Democrats are ready to do that, and I hope our Republicans can join us in moving the legislation forward. We can start voting on amendments as early as tomorrow. Now, I've had a number of conversations with senators on both sides of the aisle, and one thing we're interested in doing is adding the bipartisan USICA proposal, the U.S. Competitive and Manufacturing Bill the Senate passed earlier this year. We're going to add it to the NDAA. There's a lot of bipartisan interest in doing this. It's an important piece of legislation. It'll put more Americans to work in every corner of the country. It'll relieve our overburdened supply chains, including ensuring a steady supply of domestic-made semiconductor chips so vital to our economy. We've seen when there's a shortage of the chips what happens in the auto industry, the tech industry, and so many other industries. USICA would be one of the largest federal investments in science, technology, and manufacturing for decades. And of course, it includes the $52 billion for implementation of the bipartisan CHIPS program. Very important to deal with the chip shortage. So, if we can pass NDAA with USICA included, I'm hopeful we'll be able to work with our House colleagues. I've had several discussions with the Speaker and with the President on this, and we want to get this done. It's also my plan to hold a vote on repealing the 2002 Iraq AUMF. I made a commitment to have a vote on it earlier this year by the end of the year, and that's the time for that's now. Repealing the AUMF is also bipartisan, and I think we can get the votes we need to pass it. Senator Kaine, Senator Young, Chairman Menendez, and the SFRC have been leading this bipartisan effort. Chairman Reed and I want to move the process on the floor along quickly so we can consider amendments and pass the NDAA. And as I said, we want to vote on amendments soon and have as many votes as possible this week. So we look forward to working with our Republican colleagues. We'll have an open amendment process, but it shouldn't be a dilatory amendment process. And so we can move quickly, and we can either complete the bill or get on a path that gets it done very quickly. Senator Reed.
Well, thank you very much, Leader Schumer. We have a very strong bipartisan National Defense Authorization Act. It passed our committee with a vote of 23-3. It represents a reflection of the changing dynamic of the world. We're moving for 20 years of counterinsurgency now to a new era of near-peer competition. We're looking at the dimensions of warfare expanding into space, into cyber, and all these things have to be dealt with, and we've dealt with all of them in the NDAA. We're investing in platforms, in infrastructure, and game-changing technologies. We're also looking at the process of how we get these new and vital components to the troops in the field so they have the advantage over our adversaries. And the whole essence of our effort is to deter countries from thinking that a military response would prevail in the face of the United States. And the coming days on the floor, I'll go into all the details of the legislation, but it addresses an immense range of issues, from competition, as I mentioned, with China and Russia, disruptive technologies like hypersonics, AI, and quantum computing. We have to modernize our ships and our airplanes and our vehicles, and also we have to ensure to improve the quality of life for the men and women who serve us, and we'll do that. We're working hard. I look forward to a very, very good debate. I must also commend my colleague, the ranking member, Senator Inhofe. We work closely together. His thoughtful and his, I would even say, wise suggestions made this bipartisan effort possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Look, nearly 20 years ago, Congress authorized the President to go to war against Saddam Hussein based on largely false evidence about weapons of mass destruction that we now saw were completely false. It's a vote that I voted against in the House of Representatives. After the fall of Saddam Hussein, presidents have continued to stretch the use of the 2002 AUMF for purposes wildly beyond what any member who voted for that resolution could have ever intended. But as this administration has confirmed before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the 2002 AUMF has outlived its usefulness, and repealing that law would bear no significant consequences on any ongoing military operations conducted in the direct interests of the United States and for the protection of our troops and other citizens abroad. Now, the war against Iraq and Saddam Hussein ended long ago, and today the U.S. and Iraq are actually engaged in a strategic dialogue to better pursue shared security and economic interests. You don't have a strategic dialogue and having a continuing authorization for the use of force against the country that you're having a strategic dialogue with. It makes absolutely no sense to keep a war authorization for a country in which we are engaged in exactly that, a strategic cooperation. It's past time that Congress act responsibly, repeal this outdated authority. That's precisely what we intend to do. I want to acknowledge Senator Kaine, who has been a very powerful voice on our committee on this, as well as Senator Young, in a bipartisan effort. It passed the committee in a bipartisan effort. Lastly, on USICA, I will just say we have spoken with one voice. You know, it happened earlier this year, so people forgot. We spoke with one voice in the Senate that China is the single most geostrategic challenge the United States has, both in economic, security terms, and as it relates to our values. USICA includes the Strategic Competition Act that virtually passed almost unanimous. Only one member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee did not vote in favor of it. It's in USICA. So we have the economic wherewithal to make sure that we can compete with China, and we have the foreign policy initiatives that are necessary to confront China as we deal with this strategic competition. So I applaud the leader for including it in NDAA. It's already had overwhelming bipartisan support. It should be a no-brainer.
Thank you, Bob. Senator Kaine.
Well, thank you, Leader Schumer, and I'll just begin with the thanks. I really so appreciate Chairman Menendez's support, as I have endeavored for many years to get Congress to re-own Article I war-making powers. He's been such a strong supporter of it. I want to thank Senator Young, who helped make sure this vote was very bipartisan in the Foreign Relations Committee, and as soon as we voted on it, Leader Schumer committed that we'll have a vote on the floor this year, and I appreciate that as well. Chairman Menendez said it pretty well. This is a straightforward vote, a vote on repeal of the 91 and 02 Iraq AUMFs it's a straightforward vote in a couple of ways. The wars are over. The first Gulf War in the 1991 authorization is over, and the 2002 war ended in 2011. It's been over for 10 years. Moreover, as the chairman mentioned, Iraq is now not the enemy. Iraq is now a partner in many ways, and we're working cooperatively with them to continue to defeat ISIS, to engage in economic and diplomatic efforts in the country of Iraq and in the region. And so you don't keep a war authorization against a partner. You don't do that. But there's also a couple of bigger issues at stake that I'll briefly mention. One, if you leave a war authorization on the books when its purpose is expired, I call it a zombie authorization. And it is legal authority out there for a president to grab and use to justify military action and bypass Congress. So Congress has to be in the business of taking our Article I power seriously, and when the need for an authorization is over, we need to retire it so that it's not used by a future president to bypass Congress. And that's the last point I'll make. I told my colleagues during lunch I came to the Senate in 2013 with 100 interests and 10 passions and 1 obsession. And the obsession was, I don't think we should be at war without congressional involvement. I don't think we should easily allow presidents to wage war without coming to Congress. It's directly contrary to Article I powers. It's directly contrary to the intent of how we put our Constitution together. Unlike other nations, the United States was supposed to be a place where the initiation of war was not for the executive but was for the legislature. To me, this step, although it is straightforward in the way Chairman Menendez described it, is also about Congress deciding, finally, to begin to retake Article I powers back. And my final thanks is to President Biden. Most presidents want to have very expansive views of Article II powers, and they're a little bit threatened by Article I powers. Joe Biden was the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He wants to inhabit every square centimeter of the Article II powers of the executive, but he's not at all threatened with the idea of a Congress fully inhabiting their Article I powers. In fact, he thinks it's a good idea for Congress to be fully invested in Article I powers with respect to war-making issues. And his support for this and his administration's statement that repealing these 91 and 02 authorizations will have no effect on American military operations is one of the factors that I think that has enabled us to put together a bipartisan coalition. Thank you.
Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. Good afternoon, everybody. It's economic and national security imperative that the United States continues to outcompete the world in science and technology. And that is the goal of the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, which the Senate passed in June. This legislation will boost manufacturing and innovation right here in the United States, creating high-paying jobs and helping address the supply chain crises and reduce costs for families in Arizona and across the country. Now, microchips are in most things that we use today, from our phones to cars to the most sophisticated and advanced weapon systems. And right now, we are facing a global microchip shortage. It's significant. And our reliance on microchips manufactured overseas leaves us vulnerable to disruptions. Other nations, including China, are also investing heavily to try to dominate this market. This is a national security concern for us. And that's why I worked with Senator Warner and a bipartisan group of senators to pass a plan as part of the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act that will boost American microchip manufacturing and development. This will strengthen our supply chain and create high-paying jobs in Arizona and in other states that already are leaders in microchip development and production. But this plan has sat idle in the House of Representatives since we passed it in June. Folks, there is no more time to waste on this. We need to get this passed. That's why I'm working to add the United States Innovation and Competition Act to the defense bill so that we can finally get this across the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Okay. Yes.
Secretary Yellen says that we probably can't go too far past
Look, we must pass the debt limit. We cannot let the full faith and full faith and credit of this country lapse, and we hope to do it in a bipartisan way. Yes.
Follow up on that. Have you ruled out reconciliation?
We hope to pass it in a bipartisan way.
Do you plan that vote on the debt limit in December? What's your timing on that?
As I said, we cannot let the full faith and credit of the United States lapse, and we are focusing on getting this done in a bipartisan way. Yes. You got to talk a little louder.
When do you expect this privilege scrub and bird bath to be complete, and when the Build Back Better bill comes over from the House, how soon can you take it out?
Right. We're already working on the privilege scrub. That we can do. We don't have to wait for the House. We don't have to wait for a CBO score because the language is in it. And as everyone knows, the privilege scrub is a little different than the bird bath. It's just seeing if any portions of the bill cause the bill to lose its privilege, which means you lose all the rules of reconciliation. We're making good progress on that with the parliamentarian, the privilege scrub, and we hope we can get that done as early as this week. But then, of course, the House has to pass the bill. They haven't done that yet. That's what's delayed our plans. And you go through the bird bath, which is, and Republicans can choose to bird bath a whole lot of provisions. Now, if they try to be dilatory, the parliamentarian can cut them off. But that's going to take a little while, too. And then we will move to get the bill done. We aim to pass, the BBB is very important to America. We believe it's very popular with Americans. We aim to pass it before Christmas. Yes. Got to speak up a little.
Found the policies that you're trying to pursue are quite popular.
Yes.
Yet the Democrats are not. The president is not. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on why that is.
Well, look, I'm not going to speculate on that. What I'm going to tell you is that passing the BBB bill will be very popular, and once we pass the bill, we will, the president, he's already said this, he's already started to do it with the BIF. We'll go around the country talking about it, as will all of our senators and congressmen, and I think it'll prove to be very beneficial to those who voted for it.
Leader Schumer. Are you expecting to just include it in the bill? Or
Exclude what?
include the legislation? Is it going to be a standalone
What?
amendment?
No,
to the defense
with
bill?
USICA, we hope to put it in the original bill that we put on the floor tomorrow.
And then there's a lot of
Yes,
opposition.
nope, one at a time.
Based on your letter from Sunday morning and what you just said about the timing here, why should we not, expect this to be like what we've seen in previous years? Christmas Eve morning vote, a New Year's Eve vote. Do you really think it's legitimately going to take that much time if history is our guide?
Well, look, we want to get all of these things done. It's a huge agenda. We have funding the government, we have debt limit, we have BBB, and we have the defense bill. That's a huge agenda for December and the end of November, but we aim to get it all done. That's what we've said we've done in the past when you've had doubts, and we said we can get all these things done. We have, and we aim to do the same. Thank you, everybody.